Hey, hello, Mahoning Valley. Welcome back to another edition of Turning Red here in Youngstown Studios. I'm Denny Malloy.
I'm Regina McManus.
I do that every time.
You do.
I do that every time.
That's how you know you're live, right?
Yeah, that's right. Turning Red with Regina and Denny. And we have special guests today. And I can't even call this a guest. It's like we're kind of hanging out today, just hanging around with buddies, and we're just going to talk. We're going to talk like we do when we see each other at a fundraising event, or I see you in the grocery store, and we end up talking and BSing in the aisles and backing up the lane and everything. But we got State Senator Mike Rulli live in studio with us.
Honored to be here, guys.
And I don't want to offend you by calling you a politician.
I only play one on TV.
You only play one on TV. I found out you play a lot of different hats, but you're Mike Rulli. You're the one and only Mike Rulli.
Thank you,
and
brother.
people
Yeah.
have loved you and your family and the grocery store. And, I can honestly say you're a guy I've never heard a bad word uttered about. And when they say Mike Rulli, there's a smile on whoever it is. Yeah. So we are so proud to have you representing the Mahoning Valley.
Thank you. Kind words, my friend. Thank you.
And I'm not even going to say, you're a Republican senator, because you're our senator. You're a senator for the Democrats, the Republicans, the independents, people that hate politics, people that love politics. I've heard so many times that if you got a problem, call Mike Rulli. Mike Rulli will take your call. Go in and see him at the store. Stop in and ask him if you got a question. You're down there not to be a politician. I don't even think you like politics, from what I understand. But you've learned to play the game from dealing with people and solving problems that your dad and your grandfather instilled in you probably in an early age on how you treat people is how you need to be treated. And you've treated the customers, whether it's a bad piece of fruit or whether it's they want a nice steak. You've treated them the same way you treat your constituents out there. You don't ask the guy at the bologna counter, you Democrat or Republican.
Well, you never do that. And, for me, being around in our family business for 105 years, I felt like obligated to give back. So there's an inner feeling, whether when I was involved with the churches and trying to save them and our local school, I saved that. I feel like you have to give back, and I'm honored to do it. And when I was knocking on doors, I knocked on almost 21,000 doors. I didn't knock on any Republican doors. So I'm a Republican, but I figured if you're a Republican and you're not going to vote for me, then why am I even bother running? Mm-hmm. So I concentrated. They have these apps on your phone. So I knocked on all Democrat doors because I do represent Democrats. And I think what's going on in the country is disgusting, this divide where everyone's against each other. I don't think that's what this country is about. I think we should all be able to have a cup of coffee and talk about it. And if, calmer heads prevail, and if we could get together and we could, a lot of times you could just work it out with communication and being kind to your fellow human beings. Yeah,
you've somehow stepped up in your couple of short years as being senator. I know you're up again in 2022.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But in your couple years of public service, official public service, you've made such an indelible mark on the Valley, and I'm not just blowing wind. Or you're the guest, so I'm gonna stroke your ego or whatever. But I've heard more from people, even in Trumbull County. It's not in your district. Your district is exactly where are the parameters of your district?
Well, technically, my district is all of Mahoning and all of Trumbull County. So, like in Ohio, you have
all of Columbiana,
all of Mahoning. So
right,
those two counties are completely mine. I do a lot of work in Trumbull, a little bit of work in Ashtabula. I'll do anything in Ohio because I represent Ohio. But, my district in particular, in the last 20 or 30 years, you hear a constant theme that nobody remembers Youngstown or Warren in Columbus. It's always the 3 C's, and there's a lot of truth to that. But like your title says, Turning Red, I think that my party realizes that if you want to make headway in Ohio, you can't ignore the corridor anymore, which is everything from the river to the lake. So, I hate the word Rust Belt, but you have a lot of cities that build America, and we're the heartbeat of America. And I think it starts all the way over in Altoona or even in Allentown, and it goes all the way up into Buffalo, Pittsburgh, of course, Youngstown, Akron, Canton, even Lima or Cleveland. I mean, you have all these cities that built the country, and then people think it's cool to send our jobs across seas and celebrate that. So, I think that's what I'm here to do, to put a spotlight on the area.
I think first and foremost also, and I ran for commissioner up in Trumbull County, but I'm a Valley guy. I went to Cardinal Mooney. I live in Trumbull County now. You went to Poland. Yep. You live in Columbiana County. Yep. But Mahoning Valley's home to you. When people ask me where I'm from, I still say Youngstown. Even though it's Trumbull County, this is our region. These are the people up here that understand the festivals, the culture, the nationality culture, the Italian culture, the Irish culture, German culture. Those are the people that shop at a neighborhood grocery store still. These are people that understand, what a Mooney Ursuline football game is all about, or what a Poland Canfield game is all about. There's something special about that in the Valley where really I don't see that perimeter, that line, that county line. And it is necessarily something you said. You said you come and we've seen you in Trumbull County a lot. This many people can vote for you in Trumbull County. 0.
That's right.
But you're still there. This many people can vote for you in Ashtabula, but you're still there. You're still working with Sean O'Brien in the past. You're working with Sandy O'Brien now. You'll work with, like you said, you work with anybody. That's what a politician should be. That's what I should say. That's what a representative of the people should be. Not a representative of the party, not a representative of a clique, not a representative of an interest group. That's what it should be.
Well, bipartisan, I really like, and I think like when you look at the national level, and it doesn't matter what president you're talking about, the last 4 or 5 presidents, they get in there and they do these executive orders. Well, the thing about an executive order, it's just pen and paper. It has no substance to it. Legislation has substance. And like actually right now as we speak, I have 2 brownfields bill. I have Senate Bill 83 and 84, and I'm working with a wonderful woman named Sandra Williams, okay? And Senator Williams is a senator. She's a Democrat. She lives in Cleveland. She represents Cleveland. Rumor has it she might be running for the mayor of Cleveland. She is an absolutely amazing woman, and I'm honored to work with her. So her and I realized that in Ohio, when I first got in, and Sarah from the Chamber of Commerce was taking me for a ride around Youngstown, and I wanted to know about the properties that we offer, how to bring business in here, because the cornerstone of why I'm doing this is I realized when my son, was in 8th and 9th grade, that the culture in the Tri-County area celebrates our kids leaving. That's crazy. I mean, I remember somebody graduates from YSU and gets a job in Phoenix or in LA or Frisco or Chicago or New York, and we're having a party for them. And I'm like, this is crazy, because now mom and dad, there's a disconnect. And in Youngstown, you mentioned, I live in Columbiana and I graduated from Poland. My family spent 100 years on Early Road on the east side, and my grandma, Jean Annie, she was on Lansdowne. So on my dad's family, we had a really strong affiliation with the east side. In fact, a couple years ago, one of my bread drivers still lives on Early Road, and we went back and we looked at all the grapevines that my grandpa planted in the 1920s. And my mom's family was from Lansingville down, and they went to Wilson and stuff. So I have affiliations with Youngstown, and that's always been, my sense of who I am. But I realized that this culture of telling our kids, go ahead and hit the road, and we think that's cool. I'm not cool with that. Mm-hmm. So right now, Sandra Williams and I, we're going to analyze all these. We have an 83, Senate Bill 83. We're going to do studies with all these cities that I mentioned, whether it's Youngstown or Warren or Cleveland or Akron or Canton or Lima, the cities that got hit when they pulled our industry out.
Right.
And this is the sick thing. When they pulled our industry out, it was done by Democrats and Republicans. We have to analyze what happened. You had greedy, huge corporate monsters that thought it was cool that we could be a consumer nation. America cannot survive as a consumer nation. We have to produce, we have to manufacture. That's how we are going to survive. And the corporate raiders, if you remember in history, like through the 80s and the 90s, first they move all our factories to Mexico. And then the Mexican worker wanted more than $1 a day. And they said, well, wait a minute, I should be able to make 30, 40, 50 bucks a day. So what did the corporate raiders do then? Then they moved everything to China. And then China wasn't cheap enough. Then they moved to Indonesia. And then that's not cheap enough. And then they moved to Africa because they're constantly looking for basically slave labor. Mm. And what does that do? That decimates us. Yeah. So Sandra Williams right now, her and I are going to go through and we're going to clean up these brownfields, and we're going to wine and dine these corporations to move their manufacturing here and make it inviting for them to come here.
Now, that's one of the things you're involved with in your short time. Let's talk about first politics in general. Regina, you've been involved in consulting and working with politicians for more than a dozen years. So you've seen politicians come, they want to be groomed for a job, they want to figure out how to vote, they want to do this. You're a little unique. You were a guy that everyone already knew you. And as soon as you said, I'm in, I mean, you took on, there was no name you were afraid of. You took on a big name, Bo Cherry.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the name.
Biggest Democrat at the time.
Former
Why
congressman.
did you decide to jump into politics? What was it?
You want to know the story?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so it's funny because I've always been good at speaking. And when I was at Poland, I was second in the state for extemporaneous. And then I went to Emerson College and I got a degree in speech, actually. And I have a second degree in business communication. So I've never been afraid of my tongue. As Ron Verb says, don't fear your tongue. But I remember when my son was really, really young. I think he was like 2. And I stopped home for lunch and my wife had CNN on. And they had this panel on and they were analyzing 9/11. And these cats on this panel were saying how America asked for it, that we got what was coming to us for 9/11. And I just remember saying to my wife, pointing at the TV, and I said, I just moved a lot further to the right by listening to that, because then I think for me, that was the first time I saw counterculture being born and the blame of America. And I personally think the American story is the greatest story ever. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if you're talking about George Washington or if you're talking about John Adams, because the people that want to go against George Washington, they don't have anything to say about John Adams or Benjamin Franklin or the whole experience of what makes us who we are. But when I saw CNN saying that we deserved what happened on 9/11, I said, enough's enough. So then I started getting involved in the party. And I remember like the very next month, and this is like 01, I think. It's 2001. I saw David Johnson took an ad out in the Salem News saying that there was a Republican golf outing. Well, I didn't know anyone in the Republican Party in Columbiana. And in fact, my mom's brother was a union president. So like I always knew more Democrats, whether it was Muzzy or all the guys that make up, the Youngstown Democrats. Those were the people that I knew, what's his name, whether it was Ungaro or whether it was the treasurer, whoever it was, they were always in the store. So I was always around Democrats. So I show up at this golf outing with my clubs and I didn't know anyone. And this car pulls up and it's David Johnson and it's Mike Halleck and they have Bob Sebo in the back. And they're like, are you the guy from Rulli Brothers? I'm like, yeah, like you're going to play golf with us. And I stink at golf too. And we just had the best time. And we just talked about life and we talked about just how lucky we are to live here. And it was just so nice. And then I just started getting involved, with politics a little bit, but I didn't run for anything. And then in 2004 and 2005, I go to St. Patrick's in Leetonia, and I'm a pretty big Catholic. And so third degree Knight of Columbus and, St. Patrick's in Leetonia was the first Catholic church in Columbiana. And the Catholic Church has had its trials and tribulations over the last 20 years. I personally think John Paul was one of the greatest popes we ever had. So when I was an altar boy at Holy Family, I almost became a priest, that's a different podcast.
Yeah. Rock star,
priest to grunge, bass guitarist, grocer to senator.
I've had an eccentric life. We'll say that.
We have Forrest Gump in studio with us today. You're right here in Youngstown Studios.
Well, that's a good story, the priest story. But so I had people from the church say, could you get involved? And so what I realized is that St. Patrick's had gotten into a debt with the diocese. And then I realized when I met with the bishop that we have a massive priest shortage. Mm-hmm. So basically we cut a deal with Bishop Murray where I said, if you give me a year, I'm going to pay off the debt. And it was a pretty big debt. It was over 100,000. So we started the pierogi committee. So we started making homemade pierogies. Yeah, we started making 10 to 20 grand a year. And then I just started doing, smoke rib fest in the summer.
That's where it comes from.
Chuck-a-luck wheel and all this stuff. And so we paid off our debt. And then we were able to share a priest with St. Paul's in Salem. And so we saved the church. And then literally the next year, Leetonia built a brand new campus, K through 12. And I remember when they were petitioning for it because Newt Gingrich's ex-wife used to be from Leetonia. Mm-hmm. So he secured all this federal money. We had this really old building full of asbestos from like the 1920s. So they ripped that down and they built a brand new campus. And I don't mean to disrespect any people that were on the school board then, but they were completely incompetent. And they took, when they built the school, they had $3 or $4 million in the coffers and they went through it and we got put in fiscal watch. So they were trying to pass a levy. So they asked me, would you join the levy committee? So I did. Knocked on doors in Leetonia. And Leetonia is a mixed bag. Like you'll have a very, very successful business owner that has a little gentleman's farm on the outskirts. And you have guys that are in the city that I would knock on their door and they're like, Mike, I make $18,000 a year. I have no money to help your school. So we lost levy after levy after levy. So then I started going to school board meetings, and I started getting in the weeds. And I realized that the guys on the school board were all in it for the wrong reasons, and they were competent, and they didn't really know what was going on. So I'd ask questions, and they were insulted, and they insulted me. And the one guy goes, "Why don't you stick to selling bologna, which you're good at?" Which I do think I'm good at. I pride myself on being the best bologna salesman in the country. So I ran for school board in Leetonia. I got more votes than anyone in history. I think it was like 2,100 votes out of only 2,300 possible. And within my 10-year on the board, we went from like $600 and some thousand in the red to $6 million in the black. And we started moving up for, quality added and all these different rankings as far as schools go. And to this day, I think we're still sitting on 5 or 6 million. And I did it with a lot of different ways. I did a lot of grants. We had a big campus, so we signed with the oil and gas well, which they never even used, and I was able to kick up like an extra $600,000 with there. And then I worked really closely with the teachers union. I signed 3 teacher union contracts. The first 2, unfortunately for the union, they had to really take it in the shorts. But by the time we made money, my last year in there, I gave the largest raise to the teachers in the state of Ohio. So they helped me, we helped them. That's how you do it. You do it like a family. Like I'm working with Sandra Williams now, like I work with, Sean O'Brien. I work very closely with the commissioners in Mahoning County and Columbiana County, whether it's David Ditzler or Carroll or Traffic Canny. When they need something, I pick up the call. I'm available to them. I don't care what party you're in. Let's just get together and let's fix this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit more about just the Mahoning Valley in general. This you see in Columbus probably. I had to go to the State Police Academy in Columbus when I first got out of college. I went to West Virginia University. I know you're a Mountaineer fan too. And I had to go down to Apata in London, and I was down there for a while, and I was in the Cleveland area. And those are melting pot areas where you have people from all over the state with kind of no culture. They don't have their own neighborhood festivals because they're not from there. They're all kind of just put in that area. And I'll tell you, you miss home. There's no place like the Mahoning Valley. But you want to come home and raise a family and live life, it's the Mahoning Valley. I can live anywhere in the world. You can live anywhere. You can live anywhere in the world. You've lived in other places. There's nothing like the Valley. And I try to explain to people that they have to understand the Valley. And that was some of the problems I had with people that move here and they want to run for office, people that want to run there, and they're not ingrained in the culture here. They don't have a grandma that lived on the south side and went to St. Dom's. They don't have an aunt that's an old West Sider in the Cheney neighborhood, Hazelwood, and places like that. They just don't understand that culture. And there's something special about being a Mahoning Valley resident that I think everybody understands, whether it's Warren, Liberty, Niles, Girard, Youngstown, Boardman, Canfield. Now we got the outskirts a little bit. You're getting some integration, New Middletown and Springfield. We're getting some people moving in the Kinsman and Champion areas and stuff that aren't from the area, and welcome. The doors are wide open for people to come here for industry and economy and stuff. But there's something about having to know it. And this is what Jim Trafficant always did best. He fought for the Valley. I believe, in my opinion, he was a guy we could relate to. He got big votes because he talked about Valley stuff in our Valley history. You're kind of similar in the same sense that, who do you talk to when you're talking about neighborhood issues? You talk to the barbershop and you talk to the grocer.
Yeah.
The grocer in the store. You hear the old stories of the old days when people used to go to the neighborhood grocery store. Was kind of like the neighborhood church. So you being in that position, and let's talk about that a little bit. You got out of high school. Let's talk about some of these careers you've had. You didn't just go right back into the family business and say, I want to be a grocer because that's all I can do. That's in my family and it's here for me. Let's talk about your journey.
I'm the prodigal son. So for you Bible guys out there, I'm the prodigal son. So when you're Frank Rulli's son, you learn all the business. I'm a full-fledged meat cutter, and I break hind quarters and front quarters. I'm a full-fledged butcher. Every day I'm in Youngstown, I ring the register, which is how I get feedback from my constituents.
What time do you get up in the morning? Let's start
4 a.m. every day.
4 a.m. every single day.
Every single day. I get up at 4 and I usually go to bed about midnight. If I'm in town, I leave the store between 10 and 11 at night. And in Columbus, about the same. I'm just wired.
That's like work ethic right there. When you can get up and you start a full day and seize every minute of every day, that's how you become successful.
Yeah. And I think sometimes in your heart you have to, there's different paths where you're at, and I think God leads you to where you're supposed to be. For me, like, I watched my dad work his entire life, and just like I mean, just grueling work. And I remember like when we had Black Monday, and I remember my mom and my grandma crying because we thought it was going to be the end of all of us and the trials and tribulations. And then, you know, every day before football practice, I would go in high school and help close the produce department on our Matthews store. Then I'd go to football, then I'd come back. And I just remember like the whole time through high school, I said, well, I love Rulli Brothers, but this isn't going to be for me. I'm going to go see the world. I'm going to go check everything out. And so I was applying to different colleges, and I applied to Ohio U, American University in Washington, D.C., and Emerson College in downtown Boston. And I had every intention of going to Ohio U because I like the Bobcats, and I think it's really cool down there. But then I went toward Boston, and I fell in love with it, and I went to Emerson College. And I started off being a Comp Poly Law Sci major, and I sort of changed gears a little bit and got involved in the speech team there. And I realized that I was pretty good in speech, so I followed a speech degree, and I got a business communication degree. And then my junior year, I've always been really into music growing up in Youngstown. I was at Cedars constantly in the Penguin Pub. And then I used to go up to the Grog Shop up in Cleveland, and Euclid Tavern, and Subterranean and Jungle, and the Fantasy Night Theater, and Electric Banana in Pittsburgh, and I'd go down to Stashes in Columbus. So I mean, I was in awe about music. And when I was like a sophomore in high school, my brother was at Duke University. And I remember seeing REM for the first time. It was like 1982. I think Murmur had just came out, and the DBs were opening up, and Let's Active. And I was like, oh my God, alternative rock is so cool. And then I remember seeing Sister Ray down in Youngstown, and the Infidels and the Februaries. And I was just like, this is so cool. So when I was in Boston, I got asked to join a band called Red Bliss. And so it was a drummer that had been at Emerson, and he flunked out, and a guitar player that had been at Emerson, and he flunked out. And so like, you know, I didn't flunk out because I knew that my dad was going to give me the belt if I flunked out. So I did not flunk out. I got 2 degrees, but I joined this band, and it was a really cool band. And we got Band of the Year by Boston Noise, and that was in 1989. And then we were playing this crazy show at the Middle East Club, and we were opening up for I'm trying to think who it was. I think it was Helmet or the Screaming Trees, and it was this huge success. It was sold out. And this guy was there from a record company called Rough Trade, and Rough Trade was out of London, England. And they put out, like, if somebody wants a reference, they put out the Smiths and Aztec Camera. And I think they put out, who was it? Well, a bunch of English bands. So when they came over here, they had put out Halo Flies and a couple other bands. And they said, would you be interested in talking about doing a record contract? And we're like, oh my God, this is great. So our first, we did a soundtrack with Sonic Youth. And then we put a single out called Axis Bold as Noise. And then we put our first full-length album out, which was on colored vinyl, called Fishkill. And then we did another one called Gateway to Joy. And then our last one, we just called it was just called Red Bliss. So we put 3 albums out in a single, and we put out that soundtrack. And we toured the world. I mean, it was...
You played bass.
I played bass, yeah. And it was a grunge band, and we were Boston's first grunge band, because at that time... like it was like sort of exiting of like the ELO type of, like, you know, music was sort of lost for a while. And the only early stuff that was really going on was stuff like The Clash was happening. And then in Boston, of course, like Mission of Burma was really big. And I was lucky enough because when our band started getting big, there were a lot of big bands in Boston, like Lemonheads. We were really close with Bolt La Volta, Green Magnet School. We were really close with all these bands. And back then in the early 90s, it was much more communal. So like the Boston scene, we were getting together with like the Seattle scene. And so like when Nirvana was coming up, before Nirvana, you had Melvins and you had Mudhoney. And like Mudhoney was formed when a band called Green River, which was named after the Green River Massacre, Green River broke up, and you had Mudhoney form and Pearl Jam. So the band divided, and you had those 2 bands, and that happened a lot in Seattle. So we would swap different locations where we'd go there and play, and they'd come down here and play. And then like we were hooked up with Athens, Georgia people like Pylon and all these people that were involved with REM, and that was the same thing. Wow. And then this huge explosion happened in Chicago, where Steve Albini, who everyone knows produced like the first couple Nirvana albums, but he had this other band called Big Black, and Big Black got a really huge at that time. And then like down in Texas, you had Ed Hall and you had the Butthole Surfers and you had all these different bands that were becoming big. So we would all swap tour dates, where it was like, I want to go on tour, you want to go on tour. And probably Ed Hall out of Wilmington, North Carolina, they were like our soulmates. We just like swapped shows constantly. So after I graduated, I kept getting fired from my jobs in Boston because we'd always be on tour. And, now, I'm an employer, so you can't really say, hey, I could give you all this time to tour. So I pretty much spent like 2 years almost homeless. I didn't really have a place to live and I kept getting evicted. And I spent like 6 months living in a van in Lake Mississippi. And it's just like, it just was part of the fun. And so what happened with that, I pushed it pretty far. And I realized at one point after being out of school for like 5 or 6 years that I wasn't able to make a living out of this. Mm-hmm. And I had already burned a lot of bridges in Boston where possibilities of my degree weren't there anymore because the people that had hired me before I kept getting fired from. And, it's funny because when I was in Boston, I don't have a lot of regret in my life because I never do anything out of malice. I've never hurt anybody on purpose where I was like, oh, I'm going to get back at you. And I've lost almost all my friends from Boston because I'm a Republican and they're so far to the left. And I mean, a couple of them I think are borderline Antifa. And so all but 3 of them have turned their back on me, which is okay. But the one guy who didn't turn his back on me, him and I were interning at Samuel Adams. And it's the only thing in my life I regret because my junior and my senior year at Emerson, I interned for Samuel Adams. Now remember, this was in the late 80s. Yeah. And they were nobodies. So I graduated and I had the student debt and I had all these things going on and they offered me a full-time job, but they couldn't pay me. They could only pay me in stock options. Oh. So dummy me, I didn't take that offer. And my buddy's like a multimillionaire now because he stood with them. So, there's that.
Well, so then you come back to the Valley.
I called my dad begging for a job. I said, I'm pretty much desolate.
Do you have any of the old cassettes laying around?
Yeah, we have the albums. Yeah, I'll get you the CDs. Yeah, we still have T-shirts and all that good stuff. And I was in a couple other bands since then, a couple in Youngstown too, as time goes by. But I called my dad. He said, come on back. And so I did. I came back and we just started growing the business. I came back, I think in 94, 95. And I just kept growing the business and growing the business.
Now you run the business. And the rock stuff, we're going to talk more and more in length. We're going to get you on with Fast Freddy. We're going to have you bring your axe in here. You're going to play some tunes, sit on the couch with Freddie, and you and him are going to, it's going to be a barn burner show there. But with this, you run the business now with your brother?
Yes.
Now, how did your brother feel about you running around the world and him being left behind here to kind of hold down the fort till you got back? How did that work out?
It sort of worked out okay because my dad's still alive and, my dad's in his late 70s now. And when his dad died, when the first generation of all the Rullis died, it was like in the early 50s. So my dad took over the business when he was 13 in the early 50s. He's the only one in Ohio to ever have a driver's license at the age of 13.
Did they have a location before they were across from the Georgetown, or was that the original?
We were all downtown. So we started in 1917, and so we had 2 or 3. We had a store at 21 East Federal, 285 East Federal. We had a store on Phelps. We had a store in Central, and we had a store on. We had another store too, and we had 2 restaurants and a movie theater. Our Rulli Brothers' heyday was like 1925 till 1940. That's when we were at we had like 3 or 4 still open restaurants and the movie theaters, and my grandpa and his brothers all started dying. So then we almost lost everything. We went down to, I think, 1 or 2 stores, and my dad was the oldest son, so he took it over. So when I graduated, my dad was fully in charge of the store, and my brother was sort of his protege. So, that's how I sort of came back in without any hard feelings. And the brother that I actually worked closest with, him and I shared a room for like 20 years. So we're very, very close.
Good.
And I'll do anything for him. Mm-hmm. I never want the store or the politics to come in between him and I. And I have another brother who's involved in the business too now. Frank.
I didn't know that.
He's the architect. So there's 4 of us. So Frank's the architect. We put him more involved in the office and the financials. And I'm in charge of more of the perishables and the marketing. And Mark's in charge of like all HR. God bless Mark.
And you've got the 2 locations.
2 locations.
Kirk Road and Austintown.
Kirk Road and Austintown. We have Matthews Road. We use as like a warehouse and about 170 employees.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I know a multitude of people. I'm Italian, but even though it's Malloy, it was one of the things. Grandpa came over from Italy, name got changed.
Anelia
Malloy to Andy Malloy. So that was the big thing is my answer go to Rulli Brothers, you know, and I can't tell you how many times we go and you cross from Georgetown, you'd walk around. It was a neat little store. When I got older, you miss that food. And when you go to a Giant Eagle and stuff, it just doesn't scratch that itch. You don't have the pepper sections and the olive sections and all the, you know, to go in and find, all of those unique ingredients that grandma used to have in the pantry. You can't get those anywhere else. You got to go to Rulli Brothers to get and your meat section, your deli section, chicken breasts when they're on sale 99 cents a pound. Oh my God, you got to go in there and get that. Or 29 cents. Sometimes I guess you have the
29 cents every day of the year. Yeah. Well, with the bananas are 29 cents every day of the year. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
You know, it's funny too, and I'm not here to plug the store at all, but people have to be careful as far as the meat industry goes. So like, I think it's just us and Catulos right now that still have swinging beef, and people need to understand what that is. Our swinging beef program is all Ohio grass-fed beef with no steroids, all natural, and we actually break down the beef. And something really horrible happened in the 90s. The Walmart lobbyists basically lobbied in Washington to change all the parameters of how U.S. beef is produced. So like when Walmart's is having like a porterhouse on sale, Walmart's will go, most of the beef in America is produced out of Iowa or Nebraska, and there's only 5 houses, you know, IBP, National, Sugar, there's only 5 houses that still produce beef. So like Walmart changed the laws and they were the first to do it, and everyone's really followed them, whether it's Target or Kroger or any of the big boys, of course, Amazon and all those guys. When they put porterhouse on sale, they'll put an order in, say, for 200,000 porterhouse. So they'll cut the porterhouses and they'll put them on a conveyor belt, and the conveyor belt will go through and they'll be sprayed. And then what they're spraying them with is with a dye preservative.
That's that red stuff. When you look at Walmart, like, oh, look how red it is. This looks fresh.
It's
It's not at all.
exactly it. In fact, my wife and I were at a barbecue about 2 or 3 years ago in Salem, and these women were fighting over Giant Eagle and Walmart. And, you know, they weren't talking about Rulli Brothers, so I felt a little bad, but I'm just sitting there, you know, and I have my beer and I'm keeping quiet. And the woman says to me, she goes, well, Rulli, you're an expert. She goes, tell her, she says, Walmart's porterhouse are as good as, Giant Eagle. And I said, And she goes, well, look at these porterhouse. She goes, look how nice they look. They're all red. I got them like 2 or 3 days ago. I go, let me show you something. So I got some paper towels and I grabbed the porterhouse and I rubbed them and I go like this. And she goes, well, that's just the blood. I go, that's not blood. That's dye. Now look at the meat. The meat's brown. Meat automatically oxidizes as soon as it's cut. So when you buy meat that's been 3 or 4 days old and you put it in your fridge and a week goes by and it's still red, that's gross.
Yep.
That's not old-fashioned meat. We cut meat the old-fashioned way. And like there's actually a place in Columbus. It's called, I think it's called The Butcher and the Chef. It's this boutique, so I'm supposed to go there and do a celebrity meat cutting like in 2 months. Just come down and check it out. It's gonna be cool.
I love supporting little guys like that. Bearded Butchers over in Medina area and Geauga Farms. I mean, there's nothing like getting fresh meat.
And if you look, you'll find us, you know, not just Rulli Brothers or Catulos, but there's other guys out there. And, you know, I think even you could go down the Horst down or Chamberlain's and you could even buy off of them. But I strongly suggest don't buy processed meat. And how you can know what kind of meat program they have, some people don't realize, like when a Walmart opens up and you go in there, there's no meat room. There's no meat cutter. There's no meat processor. There's no grinder. There's no nothing.
It's off the truck, out of a box, and
it comes out of a box. And that's just, I think that's disgusting.
And absolutely agree with you. All right, let's talk politics again, Mike. You were enlightening Regina and I earlier in the show, or earlier before we started the show. You're a state senator. Your job is to represent the people. Your job is you're the legislative branch. It's yours to go out there to make laws, to make things better, to protect the citizens from things. If somebody wants to get involved in politics, someone has an issue, someone has a beef, someone thinks we need to do this, what is the process from calling your office to you introducing a bill to the hearing, to giving input to the people, to it finally becoming law? In a nutshell, you know, we're getting shorter on time, but what is that process, and how can listeners out here now get involved? Because they just say, oh, it's politics, they're going to do what they want. The right tells them to do this, they do it, and we have no say so. You're here to tell differently.
Well, it does matter too, and I'm glad you brought this up. So, I mean, you could just go online and look up, you know, Rulli Senate or Brian Senate, or, you know. So in Ohio, there's 99 House reps and there's 33 senators. A House rep represents about 115 to 120,000. I represent 360,000. I have 3 state reps underneath me. I have Tim Ginter out of Columbiana, Al Catrona, and Michelle Hagan. Those are my 3 state reps. So you could contact any one of them or myself. And I want to give you a prime example. So I'm a lifelong Golden Eagle member of the NRA, and I'm very, very, very pro-gun, pro-God, pro-America. But when we did your Stand Your Ground, the amount of emails I got were so overwhelming, and they were very, very, very specific. They're like, make sure the governor doesn't put this in there. Make sure that we don't give up on this. Make sure we don't give up on that. And so we try to answer all the emails and the phone calls as quick as we can. And so what we do is we do a spreadsheet of all the emails and the phone calls to try to get a vibe of where the constituents are. And they're not all in my favor. And they're, if I have an overwhelming push on a subject that Michael Rulli, I feel one way about, but I feel the constituents are on another way, I'm going to go with the constituents, because this isn't about me. There is no me in my job. You know, whenever you hear a politician say, I've done this for you, or I've done that for you, that's bullcrap. You've done nothing. You're just, all I do is I'm you. You guys are my boss. Anyone that's watching this, you're my boss. So I need to get a temperature of what you're thinking, of what you're feeling. You need to email us. You need to call us. You need to let us know. And they do. You know, when we did, you know, we did a big thing, you know, what is it, House Bill 22 or Senate Bill 22, which is, you know, monitoring the governor's authority, you know, and that was a very controversial thing. And I would have very liberal people come up to me and start screaming at me, how could you do this? You know what I say? Well, you know, no power is almighty. And they go, how do you figure? I said, well, the governor still has 30 days to enact any rules and regulations he wants on any natural disaster, whether it's a forest fire, whether it's a hurricane, tornado, whether it's a pandemic, you know, whatever it is. But when you give someone unbridled power that is embedded through the state house, you have a problem. And I think you look at New York State, the Empire State, and you see what Cuomo did. You know, right now, New York State has not fixed the fact that Cuomo's laws and regulations, if you are special needs, which is one of my number one subject, special needs and autism, if I'm 80 and my wife and I have a special needs child and we're being put in a nursing home and that kid gets in his home and say he gets COVID, they'll send him to the hospital because he has COVID. They sometimes will send him back into the home and give the whole thing COVID because of what Cuomo has done. He has 16,000 people's lives on his hand because he sent them back to the nursing homes and back home when they should have been left in the hospital. So it's not cool that you give unbridled power. And for me, that was a rough subject for me because I had people on the exact opposite side that were just like, don't, you know, you better do this, you better do that. But I mean, it was like 9-1 of constituents calling, say, we can't, you know.
Well, there are open hearings sometimes too. People can go and express their view where they come and speak in front of you. You know, we've done Orange Hat Brigades before when it was a wildlife issue or a gun issue where we rounded up a couple thousand guys in orange hats and we stormed, I shouldn't say stormed.
Wrong word.
We attended the State House and they got to see us up in the gallery and see how strong the sportsman front was, and it changed and swayed a lot of votes.
Well, let's just jump on. You brought up a very controversial subject before the show, and that's the renaming of Lake Mosquito.
Mosquito Lake, yeah.
Mosquito Lake.
Park.
Well, it's the park.
Well, it's State Park. So, yeah, excuse me. So that's Michael Loychuk's bill, and it's in the House right now. And it's a very hot potato bill. So I'm going to explain to your listeners what this means. So when you introduce that bill, there's a full vetting. The most dangerous thing that happens with bills is when they're snuck right into an amendment into the budget.
Or an ominous bill where it's just in there.
But Loychuk's bill is going to have a full vetting, and which that means is, so he'll introduce that into committee. You write a bill. Now, I want everyone to realize something. In the State House, there's 4,000 bills written in every General Assembly. Only 400 to 500 of them get a committee assignment. Only 40 of them get signed into law. I've been very, very fortunate. I have 5 of my bills already put in the law, and that's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I grew up waiting on Harry and Michelle every day of my life in my Austintown store, and I never thought I would have his job, but I listened very carefully to what he said about how these hearings work. So you have an introduction where you read the committee what your bill is, and then your committee just hammers you with questions, good and bad. and that's the first hearing. And then the second hearing is usually proponent. And then on a separate day, there'll be a third hearing, which will be opponent. And a lot of times the proponent or the opponent ones will have two different hearings because there's so many people. Like I'm on the side of trying to fix academic distress in Youngstown. There's so many issues I'm involved with. This issue of academic distress for me is very consuming. I probably spend 5 or 10 hours a week just on that. I spend 5 or 10 hours a week just on Voltage Valley. And that's 20 hours right there. And then I go to Columbus and I'm the chairman of the Small Business of Ohio. That's my committee. I'm the chairman of the Trails Caucus. I'm the chairman of the Sportsman Caucus, and I run Rulli Brothers of Cut Meat. And so I'm very involved. But for the people out there that are worried about the renaming of this lake, you will have your day. So whether you love naming the lake Trump or whether you can't stand it, I really don't care what your opinion is, because I think you have a right for your opinion. And your opinion means everything. So if you're that, I shouldn't say I don't care. Of course I care what your opinion is. That was the wrong way to phrase it. But I think you have an ability to contact my office, Michelle Hagan's office, Tim Ginter's office, Sandy O'Brien's office, Michael O'Brien's office, Michael Lloydchuk, who wrote his office. So, all of us want to hear what you have to say. And if you're really ticked off about it, sign up for opponent or proponent testimony. Drive down there and we'll give you your day in court. And you could get up there and you could say, hey, listen, I've been at Mosquito Lake forever and I like Mosquito Lake. I like it just the way it's named. Or you could say Donald Trump's the greatest president ever and it has to be Donald Trump. Hey, that's America. So whatever your topic is or whatever your subject is, same thing goes with academic distress. Last year when we had testimony for pulling Youngstown out of academic distress, we had over 200 people testify. It took 3 days. Lots of passion, lots of Kleenexes and stuff. This is what makes America great. This is what makes us different than a socialist.
So you would tell the little old lady to come shopping in your store, she's got a beef. She's part of the process. She has a voice.
It's the people's house. Like Ron Verb says, if I can't go to the people in another year and a half and say, I've done A, B, C, D, E, F, G, do you like what I've done? Because if you got to fire me, you got to fire me. And then I'm right back on the deadly counter, which is okay. If you want to give me another shot, you give me another shot. I think politicians will most of the time feel that they have a right to be there. You have no right to be there. And I'm really big with term limits. I think a person that spends their whole life in politics is garbage.
I'd love to see him on the federal level in the worst way.
Amen. To me, I think you get involved in that culture and you lose touch. Which I think that's my magic, because as soon as I go back to Rulli Brothers, everyone's hammering me. Why'd you do this? Why you should have done this? I'm like, okay, bring it on. I get it. This is what I do. We're going to see what sticks.
Well, 2022 is coming up fast. It's going to be a very interesting year. We got the governor's race. We got a U.S. Senate seat that's open from Rob Portman that's going to be highly contested, hugely important for all of America, for all, in my opinion, all gun owners and all people that lean conservative. We're going to have all the statewide races, the Secretary of State, State Treasurer, the Attorney General, all that stuff. We're going to have a commissioner's race in Trumbull County, a commissioner's race in Mahoning County, I believe. We're going to have your Senate seat. We're going to have all of the state rep seats statewide are going to be on that ballot. So 2022 is going to be here before we know it. You got any predictions? 2022, are we going to stay red? We're as the valley moves out, are we going to get redder in the Mahoning and Trumbull County? Or are we going to get redder statewide? Are we going to turn bluer? Are we going to take a step back? And on the federal level, do you think with everything that's going on, we only got 2 minutes, we think everything that's going on, the Republicans are going to take back some of
that went quick.
Didn't that go?
that went too quick.
They can't contact us in Youngstown studio and make comments, and you'll reply to every comment that comes on there. Regina and I will also. This is something you can watch anytime during the week and communicate with us throughout the week, and we will
go out and vote. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. For all my Trumpers out there, if you love Trump, go out and vote. If you stay at home because you're upset, you're going to do us a lot of damage. If you're really red, you need to keep us red. We're +8. We're more than Texas. We're going to keep the state house in every which way. We have 25 of 33 senators are Republican. 67 of the 99 of the House reps are Republican. Every major seat in that state house is Republican. If you don't go out to vote, we'll lose everything. We'll lose our country. The counterculture has to be stopped. We have to do something right now. And the only way you could do it is you have to go out and vote. And I think people like Dan Rivers, I think people like yourself, Ron Verb, that are spreading the message. We cannot rely on traditional media. They are fake news. They are out to hurt you. They are going to manipulate reality. So the only way you could actually make a difference is if you go out and vote. If you love Donald Trump or you love our movement or you love, whatever whoever you love that's a Republican, go out and vote. You know, I would love for you to vote for me, but vote Republican, vote red, because we actually do care, and we're here to do hard work and get the job done. We're not here for just the opposition. So many times just wants to have a parade and have these flashy things that they do. You know what? Most of the cops I know are pretty cool. You know what? Being an American's cool. You know what? We could sit down and have a cup of coffee. I'll talk to any Democrat any day of the week. I love them. We're the party of love. It's a misconception to say we're not. We love people, and we love our God, and we love our country.
And here's another thing, too. Since the 70s, we've seen the decline in the Mahoning Valley, losing numbers, losing our kids, losing business, losing General Motors, losing everything. What do you got to lose? You voted Democrat your whole life. What do you got to lose? If you're sitting out there and you're a Democrat, you're going to stick by the way? You think John Kennedy's going to reappear and come arise in the Mahoning Valley and show up at the Covelli Center for a grand appearance? It's not going to happen. That party's dead. The party of your grandparents is gone, never to come back again. This is a new bus coming into the Mahoning Valley. It's a new wave that's coming in. What do you got to lose? And I tell this to these union workers, these guys out there working hard. They hunt and fish on the weekends. They own guns. They love their God. They love their country. Why are you still voting Democrat all the time?
Unions aren't, though. The unions are voting Republican now.
More and more.
Yeah, because we're going to take care of them. We're going to keep union jobs here. I am going to get more and more union jobs. LG Chem, union jobs. Monaca, union jobs. We're going to build another fracking thing down in Belmont, union jobs. At Southfields and Wellsville, union jobs. Lordstown Motor, union jobs. TJ Maxx, union jobs. We're going to keep union jobs here. I don't care if you're union, non-union. We're going to keep all your jobs here. Unions are one of the biggest growing members of the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's why we're turning red here on Youngstown Studios.
Red, yep.
You know, Regina and I are doing our part. She's consulted many candidates and helped the wave. You are a new leader. You are the guy. You know, right now we're missing 2 links. Mahoning Valley, we're missing 2 links. We're missing a U.S. congressman that's red, and we're missing a state representative of Youngstown that's red.
We're going to take the Congress seat back.
And I feel it coming.
Yeah.
The walls are squeezing in. You know, whether Tim runs or not, you know, he may not run. If he runs and that's an open seat, that's ours.
Yeah.
That's red.
That's right.
Whether he stays and runs again, that may be red anyway.
Well,
we don't have Dave Joyce. We'll have Johnson. We're surrounded all the way around. Could you imagine with the Mahoning Valley? Can't do any worse than it's done the last 20 years.
Tim lost his home county.
Yeah,
he lost Trumbull.
He lost his precinct.
Trumbull and Mahoning are red. So if you feel sad, think about that. Trumbull and Mahoning are red, and I thank you all. Thank you, everyone out there that made Trumbull and Mahoning red. You're the reason. You're the crossover. Keep crossing.
And this isn't an us versus them.
No.
You know, Tim Ryan's not a bad guy.
No.
I like Tim Ryan. I'll sit and have a beer. He's a good guy. But the policies, the Democratic policies behind him, the wave that he's representing coming forward, that doesn't represent us anymore. We've tried that route. We've gone that route.
Let's turn Tim red.
Yeah. Turning Tim red.
Turning Tim red. Tim, if you're listening, call Denny. We want to turn you Republican.
I've been lobbying that for years and years and years. And I think in his heart,
heard he even likes to hunt sometimes.
I know. In his heart, he's this close to being red. But for whatever reason, that blue's got a grip on it. You know, but that blue, you know, the days of Don Hanai, gone. The days of each, gone. The old, here's what you do. Here, you're born, you go to Catholic school, you're raised Catholic, you go to church, and you vote Democrat. Ain't happening anymore. This is done. This is a new Mahoning Valley that's going to come forth bigger and stronger with deeper roots.
And the Hispanic vote is coming out stronger Republican than ever before because they believe in their family. Mm-hmm. They believe in hard work. They're wonderful people, and we welcome them to our party. Come to our headquarters. There's a brand new headquarters in Trumbull County and Mahoning County, which is one of my favorite. It's right there across from the hospital. And David Johnson, who's my absolute hero of all heroes, he's right down in Lisbon, right behind the county courthouse. Most of them are open 9 to 5. We welcome you. Come and get signs, hang out, be with people that understand you.
Yep.
That's well said. I mean, we're so honored to have Mike Rulli in studio. Like I said, I don't even want to call you. I don't want to call you Senator Mike Rulli. I just want to call you friend Mike Rulli, our buddy. Regina and my buddy Mike Rulli's here with us. And how can they get a hold of your office? They want to get a hold of you?
RulliSenate.com, and just go on. Just put Michael Rulli or Rulli Senator. All the information will come up, and we'll get back to you. Gabe is the guy you'll talk to, or Michael Peppel. That's my staff, and we look forward to talking to you.
As always, too, if you need something, there's the go-getter sitting right across from me next to you.
Yeah.
They can go to Regina McManus's Facebook page at any time. And I don't care if it's planning a breakfast. I don't care if it's getting a candidate to show up. I don't care if it's giving someone a tour of the valley or a business or economic. They can go through her. She'll make it happen. She'll put you in touch with the powers that be. You want to get a hold of Mike Rulli, he's not calling you back. Get a hold of Regina. She'll make sure that Mike calls you back. I've learned that through
Denny
and through.
did something for me. One of the first functions I was ever at was a Whitetails Unlimited, and he invited me up, and I was being primaried, and I didn't think I stood a chance. I never thought I was going to win the election until election night. Until John Bocherry called me at 11 o'clock, I never thought I was going to win, and the people were so gracious to do this. But you, my friend, invited me up to Whitetails Unlimited, and I'll never forget. We were at the camp. We were at the Ohio State branch of the Canfield Fair, and you had me pulling the numbers, and you said, vote for this guy because he loves guns, which I do.
And he does that. And that's something too. You mentioned him, John Bocherry, great guy. Love John Bocherry. Don't be a Democrat.
Yeah.
What are you following Nancy Pelosi in that direction for? Why? You're from the Mahoning Valley. You care about this valley. You care about the industry. I mean, Sean O'Brien, Tim Ryan, John Bocherry. I'd hang out and have beer with any of them. I'd hunt with any of them. I'll sit around a campfire with any of them. But you know what? They're just wrong. They're just on the wrong side of it anymore.
Well, they're secretly Republicans, too, some of them.
Well, you got to believe things are changing.
If you wanted to win elections in the Valley, you had to be a Democrat. But that's changed.
I've heard that I was that way until I ran. I heard that from every politician out here. Oh, you got to run as a Democrat.
Yeah.
Do you know how I knew Trump was going to win? Like, it was literally the summer before the election, and I'm on the meat counter for like weeks because I had one of my employees had to move away and he was going to come back. So I was on the meat counter every day, and all these big guys were coming in with UAW and a Trump hat.
Yeah.
And I was calling everyone. I said, Trump's going to win. I called Rush Limbaugh, and I talked to Rush Limbaugh. I said, Trump's going to win. And I told him that story.
I'll tell you what, I just had an event in Worcester, Ohio. And I could hold my breath between Trump signs and never pass out because the signs are still in the yards. Right now? Still. So this is still Trump country. This is still red. Ohio is solidly red.
Yes.
So, hey, thanks again. Until
God
next
bless
week.
you all. Thank you.
You're listening to Turning Red here on Youngstown Studios. Please share it with your friends. Mike Rulli, he needs to be introduced to your friends. You need to let people know. Head out to Rulli Brothers. Say hello to him. See him at one of the functions. On behalf of Regina McManus, I'm Denny Malloy. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
We will see you next week.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about it.